In this chapter, we will discuss the theories related to tariff and analyze the various effects of imposition of tariff on the factors of production, because some factors are worse off and some are better off depending upon their abundance in the economy. However, there are some contradictions also in the conclusions of the various theories. So, we will discuss Messner and Lerner paradox. After studying this module, you shall be able to illustrate the Stoppler-Samuelson theorem and its implications regarding imposition of tariffs. Analyze various exceptions of the Stoppler-Samuelson theorem such as Messner Paradox and Lerner Paradox. Understand the theory of optimum tariff. Elaborate the effective rate of tariff and its implications. Now we will discuss the Stoppler-Samuelson theorem. Stoppler-Samuelson explained that under certain restrictive assumptions, a tariff can raise both relative and absolute income of the relatively scarce factor of production and lowers that of abundant factor. Assumptions. This theorem is based on several assumptions. This theorem is based on 2 by 2 by 2 model. There are two countries, home and foreign, two commodities, X and Y, and two factors of production, labor and capital. Production functions of both commodities are linear and homogeneous of degree 1. Good X is labor intensive and good Y is capital intensive. Supply of the factors is fixed. There is perfect competition in goods and factor market. Terms of trade between the countries remain constant. Explanation. Based on these assumptions, the effect of imposition on tariff by the home country on income distribution is illustrated in the Edgeworth Box Diagram, where labor is measured along horizontal axis and capital along vertical axis. Dimensions of the Edgeworth box measures the total available supply of factors in the home country. It is assumed that the home country exports the labor intensive good X and imports the capital intensive good Y. The origin for X commodity is shown as O and that of Y is O dash. OO dash is the contract curve. The isoquant for the good X is AA, while BB is the isoquant of Y. They are tangent to each other at point N on the factor price line PP under free trade. When a tariff is imposed on the capital intensive good Y, their domestic price of Y rises and their imports decline. The increase in price of Y induces the home producers to increase the production of Y. Now, the home country produces more Y and less of X. This leads to the diversion of capital and labor from the production of X to the production of Y. This is shown by the shifting of the isoquant AA of the good X downward to A1 and the isoquant of good Y BB to upwards to B1. The new production point is M, where the two isoquants A1 and B1 is tangent at the factor price line P1. Since good Y is capital intensive, relative demand for capital rises. Since there is perfect mobility of factors in the country, both labor and capital will move from industry of good X to industry of good Y. But the relative demand for capital is greater than that of labor. Since Y is more capital intensive than X, this tends to bid up the relative price of capital. This leads to substitution in both industries of labor and capital. It means that capital labor ratio falls in production of both commodities. This is shown by the less steep slope of factor price line P1 as against the PP line before the tariff is imposed. As more labor is used with each unit of capital, the marginal productivity of labor and its real wages fall. Conversely, the fall in the capital labor ratio means that the marginal productivity of capital and the real returns to capital have risen in production of both commodities. To conclude, we can say that the country moves from N to M with the imposition of tariff. Its national income is lowered. The returns to scarce factor capital increases and wages of the abundant factor labor falls in both relative and absolute terms with the reallocation of resources. The criticisms. The Messner Paradox, Messner, named after American economist Lloyd Messner, has criticized the Stoppler-Samuelson theorem for assuming that the terms of trade of the tariff imposing country remains unchanged. Messner proved that the imposition of the tariff improves its terms of trade to such an extent that the price of the imported good falls and the relative price of exported good rises domestically. This means that it is more profitable to produce the exported goods. Consequently, labor and capital will move from import competing industry to export industries. In such a situation, the reward of the factor being used more intensively in the export industry will relatively rise and that of the other factor will relatively fall. This will improve income distribution in favor of the abundant factor and against the scarce factor. This is contradiction to the Stoppler-Samuelson theorem and is called Messner Paradox. The learner paradox. The learner paradox, like the Stoppler-Samuelson theorem, explains the income distribution effect of a tariff in terms of constant terms of trade but arrives at a different result. When a tariff is imposed at constant terms of trade, it raises the domestic price of the tariff-ridden commodity. This is because the tariff creates an excess demand for the importable commodity, the domestic demand for its being relatively inelastic. Learner includes in the domestic demand for imports both consumers and government demand. It assumes that the government spends the entire revenue on the imported good. The income distribution effect in learner's case is the transferring of income from consumers to the government in the form of tariff revenue. This leads to the reduction in the consumption of importable good by consumers and its increase by the government. Learner assumes that the marginal propensity to consume of the imported goods by the government is greater than that of consumers. Therefore, income distribution in favor of the government will raise the demand for the imported goods. This conclusion goes against Stoppler-Samuelson theorem that the imposition of the tariff reduces the demand for the imported goods. Now, we shall understand the theory of optimum tariffs. According to the theory of optimum tariffs, a country can go on increasing the tariff and bring about improvements in the terms of trade and economic welfare until it reaches a point of tangency between its own highest trade indifference curve and foreign countries' offer curve. This is the positive effect of tariff. A prohibitive tariff with a very high rate reduces welfare by decreasing the volume of trade. As long as the terms of trade is stronger than volume of trade effect, welfare can be improved by increasing the tariff rate. But a tariff cannot be continuously increased because later or sooner the net gain begins to decrease and net loss begins to increase. Therefore, a country can always improve welfare by applying the right tariff. This tariff that maximizes a country's welfare is called the optimum tariff. Determination of optimum tariff. The optimum tariff is illustrated with help of figure. OH shows the offer curve of the home country and OF denotes the offer curve of foreign country. IC is the indifference curve of the home country. Under the assumption of free trade, the terms of trade between the two countries are given by the ray OT from the origin. They are in equilibrium at point A where the offer curves of the home and foreign countries intersect each other. Now suppose home country decides to impose tariff on foreign countries' goods. As a result, home country's offer curve shifts to the left to OH1. The new terms of trade line is OT1 and B is the new equilibrium point. This tariff, which has changed the home country's offer curve from OH to OH1, is the optimum tariff of the country. At point B, home country's trade indifference curve IC1 is tangent to the foreign country offer curve. The tariff imposing country can gain from tariff only if the offer curve of the other trading country is less than perfectly elastic. If the offer curve of the other country is perfectly elastic, levying the tariff will not increase the welfare of the tariff imposing country. And this is explained in figure where the offer curve of the foreign country is shown as the straight line OF and OH is the offer curve of the home country. The equilibrium is established at the point T at which both curves intersect each other. When home country imposes the tariff, its offer curve shifts to OH1. The new equilibrium is set at point T1. In this case, the terms of trade remains unchanged while the volume of trade is reduced from OC plus OL to OC dash plus OL1. Here the positive effect of tariff is 0 because there is no improvement in terms of trade, and the negative effect of tariff is stronger because the large reduction in volume of trade. Therefore, the optimum tariff is 0. The optimum tariff formula is devised by Professor Kindleberger, which is given below. TF is equal to 1 upon E minus 1, where TF is the optimum tariff rate, E is the point elasticity of the offer curve of the other country. Prohibitive rate of tariff. Optimum rate of tariff maximizes the welfare of the country. When tariff is imposed by the country becomes too high, welfare starts decreasing. In fact, the tariff rate beyond the optimum rate of tariff is called the prohibitive rate of tariff. Now let us discuss the effective rate of protection. The principal objective of a tariff is to discourage imports in order to encourage domestic production of the protected industry. Until recently, the protective effects of tariff were measured in terms of nominal rate of tariff on imports of final products. It was believed that a higher nominal rate tariff would bring a larger increase in the output of the protected industry. But the various duties imposed by a country are not likely to give a true picture of the degree of production afforded by the nominal tariff rate. For the nominal tariff rate does not take into consideration the amount of the duty on imported intermediate products and raw materials which are used in domestic import competing industries. The theory of effective rate of protection takes into account duties levied on such raw material and intermediate products. It measures actual rate of protection that the normal tariff rate provides to domestic import competing industry. The nominal tariff rate is the rate of duty on the value of the imported final product, as for example, the ad valorem tariff. It is of importance to the consumer because the nominal tariff rate affects the price of final goods which the consumers consume. The effective rate of tariff, on the other hand, is important to producers because the degree to which their production activity is protected from foreign competition depends upon effective and not the nominal rate of tariff. Consider the following example. Suppose a locally manufactured car has a selling price of $10,000 and the selling price of an imported car having similar specifications is also $10,000 in the domestic market. If there is no import duty on the imported car, we can easily say that the degree of protection enjoyed by the local car manufacturing industry is 0. In other words, the local car industry enjoys no protection at all from foreign competition. Now we assume that the government imposes a nominal tariff duty of 20% on the imported car. The amount of tariff duty per year levied at 20% ad valorem would come to $2,000. The total selling price of the imported car would add up to $10,000 plus $2,000 equal to $12,000. This would make the foreign car 20% more expensive than the locally manufactured car. Hence, the local car industry can be said to enjoy 20% rate of protection. The degree of protection is enjoyed by the local industry is exactly equal to the nominal rate of tariff levied on imported product. We should note carefully that we assumed here local car manufacturing industry uses no imported inputs. Even if it did, these imported goods are allowed duty-free entry in the country. It would be correct to say that protection enjoyed by the domestic industry is equal to the nominal tariff imposed on the imported product. The question of effective rate of protection would not arise in this case. If we argue that the domestic car industry uses imported inputs, then these imported goods are subject to import duty. In that case, we can measure the degree of protection only by using the effective rate of protection. Suppose now that the local car industry uses imported inputs accounting for 50% of the total cost of production. Total cost of producing a car and the rate of duty on these imported inputs on ad valorem basis is 40%. What would then be the effective degree of protection enjoyed by the local car industry? The answer will be as follows. The imported car would sell in the domestic market for a total price of $12,000. This is made up of $10,000 price of car plus 20% duty. The nominal rate of protection is 20%. The locally manufactured car had a selling price of $10,000. This selling price was equal to the cost of producing a car inclusive of normal profits. Of this cost of $10,000, half of it was the cost of domestically purchased inputs and other half was the cost of imported inputs. Now the government has an import duty of 40 on the imported inputs. This means that the cost of imported inputs has gone up by 40%. The imported inputs cost will now come to $7,000, that is $5,000 plus 40% of $5,000. Add to this the domestic input cost is $5,000. The revised prices of locally made car now comes to $12,000. From the point above discussed, we find that the imported car sells in the domestic market for a price of $12,000 and likewise the domestically produced car also sells for $12,000. This means that the effective rate of protection enjoyed by the local car industry is 0, even though the nominal rate of duty is 20% on imported cars. This is result of two factors. Number one, 50% of the cost component of locally produced car made up of imported inputs. And number two, the imported inputs are subjected to 40% duty. The two together constitute negative protection as the rate of this works out to be 20%, that is 50% multiplied by 40%. This negative protection of 20% exactly offsets the nominal protection of 20%, reducing the rate of effective protection to 0. Therefore, the degree of protection effectively enjoyed by an industry is not equal to the nominal tariff rate imposed on the final imported good. The effective rate of protection is measured by E is equal to T minus alpha R divided by 1 minus alpha, where E stands for effective rate of protection, T for the nominal tariff rate on the imported goods, alpha for the percentage of imported inputs in the locally produced goods, and R for the tariff rate on the imported inputs. Let us take an example. Suppose the value of alpha is 50% and the value of R is 0, then what will be the effective rate of protection if the nominal tariff rate T on the imported good is 30%. E is equal to 0.3 minus 0.5 multiplied by 0 divided by 1 minus 0.5, which is equal to 0.6 or 60%. In this case, the effective rate of protection is 60%, while nominal tariff rate is 30%. Now suppose tariff is imposed on imported inputs by 10%, then effective protection will be E is equal to 0.3 minus 0.5 multiplied by 0.1 divided by 1 minus 0.5, which will be equal to 0.5 or 50%. If alpha is 0, that is all the inputs are indigenously produced, no imported inputs being used in production, then effective rate of tariff will be equal to nominal tariff rate. E is equal to 0.3 minus 0.5 multiplied by 0 divided by 1 minus 0 is equal to 0.3, that is 30%. We can summarize that if the tariff rate on imported input is higher than that of the imported final products, effective rate will be less than the nominal rate of protection. Let us now summarize what we have learnt in this module. We have seen the various effects of tariff in micro and macro perspectives. We have analyzed the welfare implications of tariff impositions. The argument for tariff are based on different criteria of welfare. Welfare means different things to the different people and different countries in different circumstances. The infant industry argument and the optimum tariff argument are the only two valid arguments for imposition of tariff. The revenue argument and balance of payment argument are of particular interest to the less developed countries, which are in need of revenue and who have to conserve the scarce foreign exchange. The theory of effective rate of protection has been empirically studied by Balassa, Johnson and two other economists. They explained that the effective rate of protection is different from nominal tariff. Industrial countries depend more on tariffs for protection than on other protection devices. Johnson's study shows that the gap between effective and nominal rates is particularly large in case of products having special interest for developing countries. Raw materials from developing countries are allowed duty-free or at very low rates. Semi-manufactured goods at higher rates and fully manufactured goods at extremely high tariff rates. The manufactured products enjoy high effective rates of protection in industrial countries.